am joined by Dr. Jane Kazmarek, who is an astrophysicist here at the Dish, and she's actually from America. Jane, how did you end up here in Parkes?
So I actually started my job in Sydney, but I was actually over the big kind of city smoke, and I decided to move to the country, and I haven't looked back since.
So before we were discussing, a lot of people think this is a historic site, but it's actually very much still in use. Tell us about what it does do.
Well, even right now it's doing some science. So right now it's looking at a type of dead star called a pulsar, which are kind of like these lighthouses that blink across the galaxy. And we use them to do all kinds of different studies of location and kind of how our galaxy is situated and built. But Parkes is primarily a research instrument. So 24 hours, 7 days a week, we are doing science. And that's been that way since 1963.
Can you go into some of the details without going, I guess, keeping it at layman's terms, but what is it used for and who uses the research that we find here in Parkes?
Yes. So it is an international instrument. Many of the people that are using the dish are located all over the globe. Some of the types of science that we look for, or that we do, are things like pulsars, like I already mentioned. We do surveys of the entire sky looking at our galaxy. I like to particularly use it to study galaxies far, far away. Breakthrough Listen, actually part of the breakthrough collaboration, is using it to look for extraterrestrial life. There's whole bunches of science that you can actually use Parkes for. It's a very, very flexible instrument.
I think ET is opening up another can of worms. Jane, tell me a little bit about, obviously you're a female in this industry, and I think it's fantastic today. We'll see so many kids out here that will hopefully take an interest in those STEM subjects that we know are in decline across the country. How do you find it being a woman in your industry?
I think it's getting much better. We're not at 50-50 or gender equality yet, but we're definitely making kind of steps towards equality. Especially in astronomy, of all the physical sciences, I think we're doing pretty well, especially in Australia as well. Most of the universities and the astronomical unions that we have here have quotas and initiatives in place that are trying to kind of encourage the move towards gender equality. And a lot of the students that I teach are actually 50% female, so the future is looking really, really good for astronomy especially.
That's awesome. That's very good to hear. Tell us a little bit about the future of space, I guess, and the future of this form of science. What role does Australia play in that, and what's it looking like?
Yeah, so Australia is leading the way in radio astronomy. Parkes is a great example of this. Well, I said earlier, it's it's primarily a research instrument, but it's almost 60 years old. The bones are old, but the brain is brand new. In fact, this year we installed a new receiver, which is like the radio eye of the telescope. This is really the thing that's powering our ability to collect light from space. And it was designed, engineered, and built here in Australia, but actually, most of the receivers that are powering, well, I should say a large number of the receivers that are powering the world's telescopes are built here in Australia, at least for radio. And while Parkes has a very bright future with this new piece of equipment, we're also looking even more in the future towards things like the square kilometre array. So that is actually going to be a huge telescope made of very, very many little antennas. Parkes, one big antenna, ASCAP or square kilometre array, and ASCAP will have many little ones. And all of that technology was designed and built right here. So Australia's radio astronomy future is very bright.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Jane. Of course, it is going to be a very exciting day here at the Dish. We're around 20 k's north of Parkes, and there'll be all sorts of things today. Some of the light-hearted things, we'll see some 60s-themed live music and vintage cars. We'll also have some really educational things like space talks and science activities for kids. So it is going to be a very jam-packed and exciting day.